Welcome back, folks, to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. I'm Chris Garlock.
And I'm Harold Phillips. But before we get started, Chris, I got to ask, how was your week? Because this is that weird kind of no man's land. Should be a holiday, but it's kind of a work week, but it doesn't really feel like a work week because there's going to be another holiday thing. How did you cope with that?
You are overthinking this like crazy, but it was great. Good to see family. But the news never stops here at the Labor Radio Podcast Network. What can I tell you?
It is so true, and our network shows have been busy putting out some great content, but we're not going to talk about what they did this week. We're going to talk about what they did over the past year, right?
That's right. This is our best of the year picks. This is round two, and over to you.
Well, it's important to realize these aren't our picks. It's not Chris and Harold making these picks. These picks were chosen by the network producers and hosts themselves. We asked them to choose their top five of the year, and boy, did they deliver.
And you can find links to all of these episodes that we're going to talk about in rapid fire because we have a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time. But you can find links to all the episodes on our socials so you can listen along after the show.
And be sure to look for the shows on laborradionetwork.org. So let's kick things off with the Heartland Labor Forum, probably the longest running show on the network, which continued its tradition of deep reporting and movement conversations, as well as moving conversations, from the Midwest.
All right, their best of the year picks included explaining tariffs and how they affect the working class, which was paired up in that episode with Hidden in Plain Sight, the 8.5 trillion in untaxed income of the rich. Wow, that is a lot of money.
Yeah, and they always pack a lot of information into every episode. Another one of their top five of the year picks was Who's Raising Hell in KC? That's Kansas City, for those of you who don't know. Boots on the Ground and the Kansas City Defender.
Cuba through the eyes of Washburn University students.
And this was a really good one. Former NLRB General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo. She was the best we've had, and Trump fired her. And yeah, she really was one of the best NLRB General Counsels we've ever had.
So what happened was on January 27th in the evening around, I would say around 10:30-ish or so, I received an email on behalf of the president, as did Gwen Wilcox. We got the same email, who was board member at the time. We got the same email at the same time, and in essence said, I'm removing you because I have no confidence that you will effectuate my policies, which frankly was one of the only truths I've ever heard come out of the president's mouth.
And we had one more from the folks at Heartland Labor Forum. This was the episode We Ask What Are Unions Doing About Members' Mental Health? An excellent, excellent question, and one that they explore on the wonderful Heartland Labor Forum.
With some great examples of some programs happening right there in Kansas City.
Man, I think Judy must have had his hard time picking those top fives. You could sort of at random just pick any of the Heartland. And was it 30, 40 years they've been around now? I forget.
Oh, it's a long, long running show, and she's got a whole team of volunteers that help put that show out every week. So they are consistently putting out great episodes.
An inspiration to all of us here in the network.
Hey, this is Dave Alpa from Labor Know Your Rights. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at Labor Radio Network, all one word, .org.
All right, next up, the Green and Red podcast had a wide-ranging year at the intersection of politics, culture, and resistance.
And they do talk about some interesting stuff. One of their picks was One Uprising After Another, the Eros Effect in Asia and Beyond, with scholar, oh, you had to give me this one, didn't you, Chris? Scholar George Katsifikis. So sorry, George. I probably just massacred your name.
We just call him George. Another one was civil rights attorney Ron Kuby on flag burning and executive power.
And this was a really cool one. The conspiracy thrillers shaped by 1970s America. This is really worth listening to, folks, if you want to hear about things like 3 Days of the Condor, The Parallax View, all those great conspiracy films of that era.
When I watched 3 Days of the Condor, in my head, I kept thinking of the church committee and the kind of stuff that they came up with. And I thought that really fit that in a really powerful way. And again, it says like the CIA is trying to take over the world. They're trying to subvert these foreign governments. And they'll also do it here to you at home.
Oh, I just saw 3 Days of the Condor at AFI Silver, where we do the Labor Film Festival every year here in DC, and that
It still
movie,
holds up.
it
It
holds
still holds
up.
up.
It really, really does, and so wonderful to see young Robert Redford.
Yeah, rest in peace, Robert Redford. You were really an inspiration as well as an actor and as a human being.
The last one from this batch, I Am Unfinished Business, poet Fadi Judah on genocide in Gaza. But they take on just the toughest topics, don't they?
They really do, and they have some amazing guests to talk about really deep stuff. But Chris, you didn't read your own script because they actually picked one more.
Yes, they did.
And it's one that we are all living with right now. It's called Trump's No Longer the Joke. He's the status quo with journalist Will Potter.
Oh my goodness, Trump's no longer the joke. Well, I'm going to disagree with that, but that's okay. Big conversations, sharp analysis, no shortage of urgency over there at the green and the red.
Hey, this is Carmen Rodriguez from El Desvío. At LACLA, we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
Next up, one of my favorite titles for a labor podcast, the Wealthy Ironworker. I've never been able to quite kind of, is that like ironic or anyway, subject for another another podcast. But in any case, the Wealthy Ironworker brings reflection, debate, and working class perspective.
Well, one of the reasons why Rusty calls his show The Wealthy Ironworker is because he wants people in the trades, like ironworkers, to have a fully formed view of their lives. And one of his best of picks really kind of exemplifies that. It's a guest spotlight with Ty Tornincasa. Ty is an ironworker who's also a financial planner. And you don't tend to think of our labor shows as being all about financial planning, but people in unions make decent wages. They have retirement plans. They got to be thinking about what comes after.
Excellent point. Another of their picks of their favorite shows from the year was Interview with Noel from Frank News.
I think it might be helpful to sort of explain, I guess, what specifically the union has done within this field that has sort of afforded you this good life. Because I do think people know broadly, a union advocates for you, or at least most people know that. But specifically, like the mechanisms they can pull to sort of make sure your job is good.
Yeah, that's really cool because Noel from Frank News actually interviews Rusty, who's behind the Wealthy Ironworker. So we get a little coming out from behind the curtain show from Rusty there.
Nice.
And keeping up with that whole people in the trades need to be fully formed humans vibe. Another of his picks was called You Are More Than What You Do for a Living. Something that I think a lot of us should remember.
Yeah, it kind of makes me harken back to your show, Harold.
Working to live in Southwest Washington?
Right, because don't you guys have like a tagline? But you should be living to work, working to live. How's that go?
Well, it's a saying here in the Pacific Northwest. We don't live to work. We work to live.
There you go.
Because when you live out in a place like this, you want to spend as little time as as possible at work and as much time as possible out enjoying the world, enjoying your life, that sort of thing.
Got it. Got it. Well, little cross show pollination there. Another one. This is 4 books you should have in your library, which I did not hear, but sounds really cool.
Well, again, you would think that a show about ironworkers and the trades, you might have an idea what those books are, but if you listen in, you might be surprised at some of Rusty's picks. And speaking of Rusty's picks, let's round things out with his last top 5 pick. Let's talk about gatekeeping. Another one where people don't necessarily think about the gatekeepers in our lives, but there are more of them than you might think.
Yeah, so it's another one of our labor shows that I think works really hard to sort of, not fit into the box that folks would
Mhm.
like us to fit into. So good for Rusty, and good for the Wealthy Ironworker, just consistently putting out episodes to ask hard questions about work, identity, and class.
Hello, powerful people. This is Seth Harris from the Power at Work blog. We're proud to be a part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. It has more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org. That's all one word, laborradionetwork.org. Thanks.
Okay, so next up, we've got Boiling Point that covers labor, politics, and power in Ohio and beyond. They're based in Cleveland, by the way. And yeah, they have an Ohio focus, but a lot of us can listen to their shows and hear important stuff going on in our own backyards.
So their best of the year picks included episode 63, Citizen Power, and the Fight for Cincinnati Public Schools, which I think underlines your point, Harold, which is, yeah, this is about Cincinnati Public Schools, but you got public schools across the country. They're all fighting, and it's all about citizen power. So it's got national ramifications.
I'd be willing to bet wherever you're listening, your public schools are fighting too.
You know, it's so cool when we have people who are saying, you know what, we might not be politicians and we might not be this or that, but we are people and we have a voice. And if we work together, we need to come together and push for what we believe in.
And they picked their 69th episode, Labor Power and Dr. Amy Acton's Vision.
They do something that, as a producer myself, you put a lot of work into doing the show, and you've got, whether it's a half-hour show or an hour show, and then you have to boil it down to a handful of words to try and get across some really good part of the show. And, Labor Power and Dr. Amy Acton's Vision makes me want to hear that show. So I hope it'll make you guys want to hear the show too. Their next pick. Episode 59, Organizing Amazon, Understanding Appeals.
And I really love this pick of their top 5 episodes of 2025, Vocab for 2025 and Workers United. Because, we use a lot of words and a lot of acronyms in the labor movement, a lot of terms like ULP and PLA. So it's really great to have a show that breaks down some of that vocabulary.
And there's episode 64, Faith in Action and Funding Under Fire. They've really got their title. I got to talk to them about it. We should do a whole show with them just on titling.
Yeah, well, the people behind Boiling Point are actually members of the teachers union there in Cleveland, so I think they know a thing or two about language.
Apparently.
But they have had a year of sustained reporting on how worker power shows up at the local level.
Hey, this is Michaela from the UFCW 3000 podcast. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
Oh, hey, Chris, before we take off, you actually had some picks for your own Labor History Today podcast.
I did. I did. You know, Harold, it made me sort of think about that. I started this podcast, Labor History Today, back in 2017. It was the year that Trump took office the first time, and it was very intentionally
Mm.
my idea. Honestly, Harold, it was just for me. I just like, this is going to be crazy, and I need to sort of keep my perspective. And so it was really useful to look back at labor history and realize, not only all the things that we've won over the years, which is a lot, but also things have actually been worse, believe it or not, than they are now. And so it was really an attempt to sort of keep that historical perspective, and it's been useful.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate about your show, Chris, is the today part.
Hmm.
Because we have a lot of labor history podcasts in the Labor Radio Podcast Network, but your focus on labor history today is really showing the listeners, or letting the listeners hear, I guess, if you want to be in the right metaphor, really giving them the opportunity to see that this stuff that happened back in 1890 or 1920 actually has relevance to the world we're living in today. It's the reason why we study history is to learn from those lessons and try not to repeat them. But you always bring that back in every episode. The idea that this stuff we're talking about isn't just something that happened way back in the past. In many cases, it's stuff that's still happening today.
Funny that, I mean, yes, that was very intentional on the part of both me and Joe McCartan, labor historian, who started the podcast with me. And what's interesting is that now we're in Trump 2.0, and
Mm.
don't you know it? Now they're basically trying to erase or stick history back in the past, where they can safely say things like, well, first of all, we didn't really have slavery, but if we did, it's past, right? It's all
And it
good
was
now.
also great for everybody involved, and nobody
It's
had any complaints, really.
right. So anyway, I think it's something that started out just as a personal passion project that I think has wound up being really useful, and I'm really happy that we're still going. Um,
Well,
and
your best of picks for this year kicked off with a show called Dairy's Missing Factory Girls from March 2nd.
And what I'll say is that, I actually wound up doing a fair amount of travel this last year, and anywhere I go, whether it's Northern Ireland, Portugal, I look for labor, and across this country, obviously as well. But it's labor history day. It's not American labor history day. It's labor history wherever we go, because it is across the globe. So that's Derry as in Northern Ireland, and that's a great show. Another one of my favorites was Tony Mizaki, who is a good friend. Cowboy Strikes and the Power of Solidarity. That's me trying to shoehorn all three parts of that episode into one title. I'm not sure it works, but what the hell.
Talk to those Boiling Point people. They'll probably give you some tips. You also picked The Raging Erie, Life, Labor, and the Canal That Changed America. And I think this is definitely one of those today parts of labor history today, because we know our current president is trying to, I don't know, plant a flag in the Erie Canal or whatever. Well, gonna do that again. Plant a flag in the Panama Canal, or whatever is going on. But finding out what it took to actually build the Erie Canal just gives you a frame of reference of what people went through to build the Panama Canal.
And the Erie, just to remind folks, built by immigrants, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of them died building it. So anyway, listen to the show. That's enough on that. I gotta say, this next one was right up there, probably tied for my favorite of the year. It's Cecil Roberts' "You Must Continue to Fight." That's from when I made a trip down to the Mine Wars Museum in West Virginia, and that's just 23 minutes of Cecil Roberts just kicking out the jams as Cecil does. All you got to do is turn on the recorder when Cecil is speaking and get out of the way. And that's what I did.
But the thing of it is, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but this is America. And all those old Woody Guthrie songs, about this land is my land, this land is your land, and this land is our land. It don't belong to the rich and the rich alone. It doesn't belong to the powerful and the powerful alone. It belongs to all of us.
And for those of you who don't know, Cecil Roberts is the recently retired president of the United Mine Workers of America. Another one that was really grounded in today, No Contract, No Coffee from November 23rd. And man, Chris, I was hoping that by the time we recorded our first episode of 2026, the Starbucks strike would be over, but no.
Well, two things. One is, no contract, no coffee was one I was thinking, does this really count as history? Because I mean, as you point out, it's still going on. But to your other point, we really draw the lines between past, present, and frankly, future, because it's all history. It all becomes history, right? And this strike right now that we're living, with, and as we always remind folks, that boycott is still on, that strike is still on. Support your local coffee shops. But it will become part of history. It's already part of history, and it's growing every week. And so we're really proud to have been able to cover that in labor history today.
We do live in history.
Exactly. All right, next up.
Okay, well, that brings us to our final show in this series. You never thought we'd get to the end, did you, folks?
We should trumpets. We should have a blare of trumpets.
That's Work Stoppage. Those folks that bring sharp analysis, humor, and unapologetic class politics to the network, and they really are unapologetic. That's one of the reasons why we love them.
They must have come in just under your deadline, right? I think you just sent that to me today.
Yeah. They fired it off, but like so many of our producers, they're busy. They're trying to chronicle what's happening right now because we really do live in history. So taking that time to look back at the episodes, pick your top 5 of the year, that takes a little bit of bandwidth. I can totally understand it.
All right, so here's the best of the year from the folks at Work Stoppage. Make Your Own Job by Eric Baker.
Yeah, that's one of their rare interview shows, but it's really worth listening to. It's Eric Baker wrote a book on the myth of entrepreneurialism. But we're going to read some titles here, and they're not going to really give you the scope of the entire show. These are just the titles of these shows that the Work Stoppage gang picked as their top 5 episodes of the year. But you should really go check them out to see the many, many, many topics that they cover in one show. I mean, they always have an introduction where they just kind of catch up on the labor news, and that takes 45 minutes to an hour. And then they go into their main stories that actually are focused. So they've got a show called ICE Are Murderers.
Palestina Libre.
Labor Librarians. That's actually about the wave of organizing in public library systems.
But this sort of thing should not be put up with anywhere, but especially in the public sector. It just really shows who the government is ruled by and for, in my opinion.
Well, I just like hiring union busters at a library.
A public library.
Like, you don't even have that many employees. Like, I don't know, like, you're trying to convince people the librarians are being greedy?
And then my favorite, Talkin' General Strike.
And believe me, they do.
I was just going to say, Harold, that your comment reminded me that really what we hope for folks to do, not just with this episode, but with every episode, the whole purpose of the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly is to give you just a taste of the wide variety of shows that are out there. And so, to sort of inspire you to go take a listen. And if you like what you hear on a particular show that we featured in this particular week, subscribe to it, check it out, and go from there. We have many, many shows in the network, and some of them are not going to be your cup of tea. Some of them you're going to love. Some of them may take a little time to grow on you. It's a wild and woolly laborific landscape out there, I guess you could say, right, Harold?
Well, it's a wild and woolly labor movement. I mean, labor is not a monolith. Everybody
Oh,
doesn't think the same way. Everybody doesn't talk the same way. But that's the great thing about the network. No matter what you're bent, when you start exploring these shows that we give you a little sample of, you're going to find some people who are talking your language and you're going to want to follow them. And who knows, maybe sometime in the future, there might be like one central app or something where all those are easy to find. But for right now, head to laborradionetwork.org, click on the links for the shows, check them out. And hey, that sounds like we're rounding into the credits.
it does. I had one little tag on to what you were saying, which is the other thing is that, listening to your favorite labor radio or podcast shows, you might be inspired, as some of our colleagues have been, to start your own. And we would encourage that. There is no upper limit on the number of labor radio and podcast shows that can be out there. So if that's something that you find, you're getting caught by the labor radio podcast bug, give us a holler. Info@laborradionetwork.org. We meet weekly. We welcome folks that are interested, or maybe you're somebody who already has a show that somehow we don't know about. Unlikely, because Harold keeps his ears so close to the ground on this. But if you're not listed in our network and you think you should be, same thing. Info@laborradionetwork.org.
I mean, it's January 2nd. It's resolution season. If ever there was a time to really just move forward on that idea that you're going to talk to a group of people about something you're passionate about, now's the time.
Yeah, if 2026 isn't the year to do it, I don't know when would be. But in any case, that will do it for this week's edition of the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. And that will wrap up our Best of the Year series until next year.
But don't you worry, because our labor radio show and podcast producers are going to be putting out fresh content as we roll into 2026. And you can find links to every episode we mentioned today and those new episodes that are coming out on the Labor Radio Podcast Network social media channels at Labor Radio Net on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, even
say it,
even
say it.
that musky social media platform.
Oh gosh, from the ridiculous to the sublime, we do want to extend a very special and heartfelt thanks to all the producers and hosts across the network for another year of just incredible work. It really, really is. We see it every week. We appreciate it every week. But this last couple of weeks doing this deep dive into the best of has been just another reminder of just the amazing, amazing work that y'all are doing. And we really appreciate you.
Yeah, it's a fact. We are amazed every week at the great stuff that you're putting out. And we're amazed by you, everyone who listens, shares, and supports your local labor radio show or your favorite labor podcast.
Speaking of which, member podcasts are independently produced, and the views expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
Short and succinctly put. For the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, he's Chris Garlock.
And he's Harold Phillips.
And we'll see you all next time.